I'm almost happy that my first band was a pop punk band and not a hardcore band, because I'm sure it would have been like the worst hardcore band on earth.
You guys ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Does like the setup look okay? I have it like propped up a little bit.
Yeah, you have a couple books underneath it, or what's the vibe?
Yeah, some board games that I prop up my work. So I prop up my work monitor with it because I have a desk behind me that I work from, and I have a couple board games underneath it. So I just grabbed those.
What are we talking for board games? Are we talking about like Sorry or the Game of Life, or what's underneath?
One is Never Have I Ever, and the other is Cards Against Humanity.
Nice, a staple if you're gonna own any board games. So yeah, that's always great. Yeah, it's funny they mention it because I think I had a job prior to the one I had now that was like a full iMac, so like the camera was like a lot higher, and then the job I have now, I have a laptop now, so it's just too low to the ground. So it's funny that you mentioned yours is propped up, but most Scope podcasts, I have something underneath it just to prop it up, which is just like, it's just a hard drive reader, but like it's angled in a way so like it's balanced nice. So yeah, little behind the scenes.
Sure.
But without further ado, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is another episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast. I am very excited to be welcomed by a fellow hardcore fanatic, Tom from ENERVATE, Milwaukee staple. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, my friend.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
Absolutely. The first time that Tom and I ever crossed paths was the day was November 2019. I think the actual day was probably the 10th or 11th, if I'm sticking to that story. But I got to I met Tom for the first time at Snow and Flurry Fest 2019. Your band at the time, Terrified Eyes, played second on the second day. And like I think I've talked about Snow and Flurry a number of times on the podcast. Was just blown away by a lot of the regional bands that were playing that. But I remember your guys' set very specifically was like just very, very fun. And we got a couple of chances to chat off stage and just like shoot the shit. And ever since then, we've been able to just connect and see each other do different cool things. So I'm really excited to finally have you on as a guest for the show here.
Yeah, this is great. That was a very unexpected reaction to our set, and that whole day was completely wild, and I was just blown away. I just had the best time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm like hoping that I don't know if like a Snow and Flurry 2020 is potentially in the cards, but that fest is near and dear to my heart, and I hope that whatever those guys have cooking up in the near future, it's a fest that I hope more people take note of when shows are back, but then like more festivals in that sense. So
yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. So Tom, you're an avid listener of this show. You've checked out a number of the different episodes, so you know that we have a mandatory bev check before we get into any more music chats. So tell me what you're going to be bringing to the show today.
Sure. So I'm the kind of person, I usually have like 2 or 3 drinks on me at all times. I'm just like drinking water constantly. So for my first bev, I have this cherry vanilla Coke Zero.
Very nice.
I'm
cool.
Don't really drink soda all that often, but I'm like, you know what? It's a beautiful day out. The Bucks are about to win the NBA championship tonight here in Milwaukee. I'm going to treat myself to a soda. So have that, and then as my backup, when I inevitably drink through that in the first 10 minutes, I just have this classic bubbly sparkling water.
Interesting. The king can size, it looks like.
Yep, absolutely. The king can. You can't go wrong.
Yeah. It's funny that you do the little Bucks tease, because I guess like the time of the recording this, that is tonight, but the time that this comes after, it'll be something that you'll be listening back. Either it's like a very harmonious or maybe not, but we'll have to see. I'm cheering for you. I'm not the Bucks are, that's football.
NBA.
NBA.
Basketball.
Wow. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're fine.
I know. I think there's some sports. I'm already going to get punished in the comments for this, but I think there are some sports that us Canadians don't get privy to a lot of things because we have one team in, the NBA or the NFL or things like, not the NFL. We're not in the NFL. What am I thinking of? Major League Baseball. So
yes.
It's just weird to, like, again, sport is not my strong suit per se, but that's who are they going up against?
They are going up against the Suns.
Got you.
They're leading the series, and the game tonight, they'll win the championship. It's actually here in Milwaukee.
Oh, okay. So you got the local passion on that side of things. So that should that sounds fun. So two bevs, interesting choices. I was drinking a blackberry bubbly just before we got on the call here. And I wanted to check. This has been sitting in my fridge for a long time, and I feel like I'm coming off of camping. And anytime you go camping, you always never really get a good night's sleep, and you're always kind of tired the next day. So I'm going to be checking a Rain Energy Orange Dreamsicle is what it's called. I know that Rain and a lot of those kind of crazier energy drinks are kind of wildly accessible within the States, but we only got Rain up here in Canada maybe only a couple months ago, and the first couple flavors didn't include this one. So this is one that is maybe only a month old, but yeah, it's really cool to see more bev options up here versus stuff that's only within Canada. So very excited to crack this open and, drink it a little bit slower than I normally would. So I'm not just buzzing by the end of this episode.
Right.
Well, yeah. Cheers to you, my friend.
Cheers.
Go Bucks. So
I hope that doesn't come back to haunt me.
Yeah. I was sorry if I'm just knock on wood. Where's my piece of wood?
Yeah.
There's a guitar. Well, Tom, I'm really excited to have you on the show. Not only a close homie of mine, we have lots of mutual friends as well, but I have noticed that you are very involved in the Milwaukee scene, not only putting on for shows, but just helping build a community there. And I'm a forever fan of those kind of people. So definitely want to chat about some of those events, the recent Milwaukee style comp that I guess you kind of headhunted and or headhunted. What's the right word there? Was the front runner for. That's the word I wanted to use.
Yes, there we go.
But before we get into that, I always kind of ask everyone kind of the same intro question, how did you get into hardcore? Tell me some of the origin story for you, the bands, the moments leading up to being obsessed with the core, if you want to call it that.
Sure. So I feel like this is kind of a common theme amongst a few of the guests that you've had on, but my first exposure to punk and hardcore music was actually through the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater video game series. I just remember being a kid and just cranking the soundtrack on my TV, and my mom would always be turn that down, it's too loud, and I just couldn't get enough, to be quite honest. And then I think it was maybe 6th or 7th grade. One of my friends gave me an MXPX CD and a Newfound Glory CD. Mm-hmm. And to this day, Newfound Glory is still my favorite band. We're talking almost 2 decades later by now, but
sure. Yeah. Wow.
So I was into that type of stuff. And then I started finding out about the Warped Tour and things of that nature. I remember one of my friends had a Warped Tour DVD. This is probably back in 2002, 2003. And I would always we'd always watch it and be oh, this is so cool. We have to go to that. But I was always at the age of a bit too young. So my mom was not yet, maybe in a couple more years.
Yeah.
And then I remember we had this record store here in town called The Exclusive Company. And my mom would always take me there, give me CDs, whatever. And I remember seeing a flyer there for like a local show at a VFW hall here in town. And I just remember seeing the flyer and like taking it home and like begging my mom to like let me go to it. And I had no idea what it was. I just saw on the flyer, it said like punk rock show, gave the address. The VFW hall was like relatively close to my parents' house. And after probably like a week straight of begging, they were just like, fine, we'll take you. So they took me and a couple friends. And to this day, I still don't remember who played that show.
Right.
Yeah, could not tell you. I still remember what the flyer looks like, but I could not tell you the lineup. I just remember just like being blown away that I was like watching like punk bands play in like a VFW hall. And that's just kind of how I just found out about shows, because this was kind of around the time MySpace was a thing. So I'd see like flyers on there, just started going to local shows. And Milwaukee's like, back then they were always like a super big like metalcore city. And back then, not so much anymore, but back then like punk bands, pop punk bands, metalcore, and hardcore bands would all play the same shows.
Right.
So I was like exposed to like a lot of metalcore and hardcore bands like when I was like 14 or 15. But at that point, like I just liked live music and I knew it was like aggressive, but I didn't know the difference per se.
Right.
And it probably wasn't for like maybe like 2 years or so going to shows when I finally started to learn like, okay, this is like a hardcore band, this is a metalcore band, and just kind of like put the differentiation between the two. I'd say the band that like actually got me into hardcore, like locally, there's this band here called Solidarity.
Okay.
They're from up north Wisconsin. And I just remember that was kind of like the first band I was like, okay, this is a hardcore band. Like they're like a super fast style. And I just couldn't get enough. So then throughout like my high school like career, I still like metalcore, but I also like really liked hardcore. So one day I would like wear like say like a Black Dahlia Murder t-shirt, and then the next day I'd be rocking a Terror shirt. So and I would say probably like my senior year of high school is when I started gravitating more towards just like strictly hardcore shows. And just yeah, that's kind of it. Just have been going ever since I was 14, and can't get enough of it to this day.
Yeah, for sure. So just so I understand the timeline 100% correct, you wanted to hit the Warped Tours and stuff really young, but your mom was like, maybe, I don't want to drive you all the way out there, and maybe we hold off on that. But your kind of first instance was actually going to a more like DIY, like local event before you got like the big ticket Warped Tour. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, I think they were actually the same year, because she finally let me go to the Warped Tour when I was 14, and I think that DIY punk show took place that same year. So
okay, yeah. So
about the same time.
Yeah. Do you know which like came first from those two?
I want to say the Warped Tour, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the Warped Tour because that's in summer, and I think the punk show is in the fall.
Got you. Yeah, because I was just like, I think that is such a thing where you see this big tour package for a big band that you've heard on the radio or seen their music video on YouTube that has millions of views or something, and then you go to that show, and then there's kind of like the spillover. If it's your first hardcore show or things like that, and then you start to discover like, oh, this is happening every week in my, local city or whatever. Or I can drive an hour into this town and also see more bands, and those bands come to my town, and there's all that crossover. Because that was very similar for me, like seeing a lot of those bigger bands play the, multi-100 person room. And then over time, like, oh, I can go to like this house show and there's like 30 people here, but they're just like going insane. So, and learning to appreciate both sides of that. So yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember, I think the first time I like knew that I was at a hardcore show, I think Terror played here in like, I think it was either 2006 or 2007. I was still in high school at the time. And I remember going to that show being like, okay, this is like strictly a hardcore show. They play at this venue that's about a half hour north of here. It's called the Orchard Inn. They haven't done shows there in over a decade now, but I remember seeing that, just loving the energy and just being instantly hooked.
Yes. Yeah. And I think like when you go to like that bigger show, like there's energy in the room for sure, but it's not that same level where it's like, you know, where it's just like, all right, everyone jump at the same time or things like
Yep.
that. Like they're like, it's not trying to knock on those bands that kind of play to those kinds of crowds, but there is something more where it's like, you know, the one show that kind of forever sealed the deal with me when it came to like hardcore energy was like seeing Means's last show up here in Winnipeg.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, so that was like
I'm jealous.
2008, and it was like the venue was called the Church Basement, and it was literally like the basement of a church, and people piling on to grab the mic from Dylan, and all the ceiling tiles are bouncing around, and PAs are falling on people, and like to me that was like my first tried and true like true hardcore show. And I feel like, you know, seeing that and then still being able to go to the other stuff, it's like this is cool, but like I experienced that like first thing, and that like kind of set a standard that I didn't know going into some of those other things.
Yep, absolutely.
So you're a young Tommy experiencing local hardcore within your world. When was the tangibility of like, oh, I can do this now? Kind of when did that come into play for you?
Sure. So I think I was like 18 or 19, and I had finally been like, okay, I want to start like a hardcore band. Unfortunately didn't pan out at that time. I actually ended up playing drums for a pop punk band that me and my friends formed. We kind of wanted to be like Such Gold, but
band
like
is sick, so that makes sense.
We were going for that sound, but it kind of unfortunately ended up sounding more like A Day to Remember with like, it was like pop punk, but like kind of like breakdowns. And I'm like, all right, I don't really want to do this anymore. This isn't really my thing. But it was fun. We were played shows for like about a year or so. And then I tried to start bands here and there, and nothing really ever worked. And then I actually fast forward to, I think, I either want to say 2016 or 2017 is actually when I did my first hardcore band, which is SLOWPANIC, which I'm still in. I play in that. Mitch from Low End and Cross Me plays drums for that. And then my friends Michael and JJ, who book shows with me here in Milwaukee and have also helped on the comp with me, are in that band as well. So it wasn't until almost 10 years later.
Band.
Yep, I play bass. So yeah, it wasn't almost 10 years later after my very first band at a young age until I did my first hardcore band. But
yeah, and I think you know, you almost need to have a couple of years of just being a spectator, you know, like I don't want to knock any kid who's like newer to hardcore that like wants to jump into a new band. Like if you feel that way, like go for it. But I think, you know, being able to see all these different kinds of shows, like then you get to see like, okay, this is a punk band, this is a punk hardcore band, this is a hardcore band, this is a beatdown band, this is a power violence band, and actually understand some of those things. And then you're also able to like, when you're actually writing the music that you want to play, you're able to like not like suss out some of the bad material, but I think you know, anybody who's played in any cool band has played in lots of bad bands. Like that's just a rite of passage, so to speak. So
100%.
Yeah. So whether those bands are like you said, like hardcore bands, or like we're gonna try and do this and then it doesn't work and it becomes something else and we get to do that. Like, you know, like when I talk about the bands that I played in, like there are some that I just leave off the table. Or, you know, if any of my close friends that like saw me growing up and know about those, you know, pop punk bands with breakdowns or the synchronized stomp metalcore kind of bands, if you know what I mean. So, but yeah, I do think that there is, I don't want to knock anyone who's like eager to get to the game as far as playing in hardcore, but I do think like just being able to, you know, absorb hardcore as you're like discovering it is really important as well.
Yeah, I'm almost happy that my first band was a pop punk band and not a hardcore band, because I'm sure it would have been like the worst hardcore band on earth.
Yeah.
I at that time, like I barely knew how to play drums. Like we didn't have like a bassist half the time. Like it was just a mess. So
Yeah.
I'm glad it kind of panned out that way instead of something else that people would have remembered it by.
Yeah. I will say any of the like youngins, especially here in Calgary, who are like starting bands for the first time are writing like way sicker material than like I was even trying to write like breakdowns when I was like 17, 18, 19. So I I don't know, like maybe it just took a couple more years, but yeah, maybe that that notion of like, oh, you need to play in some bad bands is going out the window, because some kids are just writing really killer stuff. So
Yeah,
I
better
don't
than
know.
I can right now. So
What's
good for them.
yeah, what's like you know, like I don't want to jump too ahead, but as far as like
Sure.
all ages and like the demographic as far as the Milwaukee scene goes, like what is that like? Does it lean a little bit more into like old head territory, or is there tons of youngins who are coming to shows? It might be a little harder to say now because like we're kind of into this new chapter of hardcore coming out of the pandemic. You guys have had a
Right.
couple shows, but what are your thoughts there?
Sure. So Milwaukee has always been like super up and down and like in waves. Like I remember probably back in like 2015 or so, like there was just like a ton of new younger kids. They all like were starting like a ton of sick bands, and it was like really cool. And then, kind of plateau for a couple years. So it's really just kind of like it'll be like, okay, there's a huge influx of new like high school age kids who are really stoked. They bring all their friends, shows are packed, and then perhaps the next couple years it'll just be like it'll still be steady. Obviously, it'll still be really good, but um, I would say like our demographic now is probably like early 20s.
Sure.
We haven't had a ton of new younger faces lately, which is definitely something that I'm trying to bring back up.
Mm.
Definitely want the youth involved. But yeah, I would say as for right now, it's probably like early to mid 20s. So
Yeah.
I'm probably one of the I'm 30, so I'm probably one of the older faces. If you
Yeah.
want to call it that, older, quote unquote. But
Yeah, I know. Like I've had multiple conversations with people on the podcast and off where it's like, I think for me specifically, I was always looking up to people growing up. Like it was, people in my youth group who were like at least 5 years older than me, or like people in
yep.
hardcore that were like, into their later 20s, and I was like just about to turn 20. And now like I blinked and now it's like the reverse. Now there's people like that I'm bringing on the podcast that I like love their bands, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm 22." I'm like, "Oh, we have a 6-year age gap." Okay, sick. But I think that is personally really cool to be able to be a part of a community and culture where like it's not like age isn't really like a factor. Like you can be 17 and talk to like the 35-year-old who's been in like every band that you can imagine, and
Right.
you can connect on like the coolest demo that just came out in the last year or something. So I think that's
Hmm.
really cool. And obviously, if you want to kind of like rebuild or like kind of shift the average age in more of a younger direction, because hardcore is a youth, you know, it, a youth fueled subgenre. You need to have the options for all ages shows and all that kind of stuff. So
Yep, 100%. That's something that we always push for here. Like, I know myself, and then I mentioned Michael and JJ earlier, who I work with very
mm,
closely on shows. We don't ever do 21 and up. It's always all ages.
mm,
Um, Milwaukee, I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit more later, but for a few years back, we were always in like kind of like a weird spot with venues. We didn't have like a place to call home essentially, so we were literally just like booking shows at like any place that would allow us to do it. If we did one show there, two shows there, then they told us to fuck off. Like that would kind of be it. But it was all, we never do like bars or anything. It's always all ages, and we're finally at a place where we have actually two sick all ages venues that are down. And
mhm.
I'll get into that more a bit later, but definitely super important.
Yeah. And like we will definitely get into like the actual names and the comp and all that, but like maybe we can just quickly dig our heels into just the why of like not like why all ages, but just like why is it important to like fight for that and like kind of double down on that for you specifically. Like if you were kind of looking at yourself in that and I will just add like I'm having flashbacks to when I had another person on the podcast, and all ages is like different country to country, right? Like Canada is like 18 plus, and then for you guys it's largely 21 plus. So those 3 years are super crucial as far as someone getting even slightly interested into hardcore, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the big reasons I always push for all ages shows, and for like all ages venues here, that literally means all ages. You could be 10 years old and walk into the show.
Yeah.
The main reason I push for it is just because like myself personally growing up, all the shows like I went to were all ages shows. There were like a couple like 21 and up shows that happened here that I actually like ended up sneaking into like before I was 21, but I would say 99% of the shows that happened here when I was growing up was all ages. And even back then, like we didn't really have like a ton of like proper venues, quote unquote. It was always more like DIY, like VFW halls, banquet halls, catering halls, whatever the case may be. We have like a big venue here called the Rave, which is like, just your normal, like whatever, 600 cap with like a 10-foot barricade and,
Sure. Yeah.
But, I just think it's super important because if those shows didn't happen at spots that all ages could have gone to, I started going to shows when I was 14. And if those are all 21 and up shows, I wouldn't have gone to those for 7 years.
Right.
So,
and by that point, you would have probably just picked something else to do or get interested at that point, right?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Right.
I definitely wouldn't be the person I am today if it wasn't for those early years of like the punk, metal, and hardcore shows that I went to as a kid and growing up. So anything I can do to replicate that experience, for someone else who may be coming to these at a younger age, I definitely want to, do everything in my power to help that out. So that's my reason why I'm such a big proponent, and it just opens up a whole new, demographic of kids who, wouldn't even be 21 and couldn't go to the show. So
for sure,
definitely think it's super important.
And I know that you also mentioned just like struggling for a couple of years of like having a place to call home is the wording that you use. So it's very easy to be like, oh yeah, we'll do this show here and then fuck off and do this show here. Like, what has been the value that you've seen to be able to be like, yo, this is the spot that we all congregate on Saturday night or Friday night or Sunday matinee or whatever it is. And how do you think that benefits a kid who's like, I am just finding out about this. I don't even have a driver's license to like drive to all these different places, but at the very least, I know that there will be something happening that I can come to. That's always at the same spot. Like, where's your mind go with that?
Sure. So for about 10 years or so, we had a spot here in Milwaukee called the Borg Ward. Rest in peace. Excuse me.
You're all good.
It was just an art gallery here in town. And art gallery / venue that did shows here for about 10 years or so. It ended up closing back in it's either 2015 or 2016. And then for the next several years, we just didn't really have like any place, like consistent spot, because the Borg Ward was always like, okay, if there's a hardcore show in Milwaukee, it's going to be at the Borg Ward. This is like where all the sick bands play, this is where everyone wants to play when they come to town, sort of thing. I saw so many crazy, like legendary shows, just even bands like back on like their first tour that went on to like, like I remember seeing like on, I think it was like on Easter in like 2015, like Knocked Loose played there to like 20 kids. Right. And like, look at them now. They're like selling out 1,000 cap rooms. It's like, it's like absolutely insane. But yeah, that place ended up closing back in 2016, I believe. And We just never just had a consistent spot. Cause that was like home, right? Like that's where we would all hang out. And once I started booking shows, we just kind of would call different places, kind of explain what we're doing. I'd basically be like, yo, I'm looking for a place to host like 100 people. There's going to be some live music. If you have a bar, you can keep all your bar money. I don't care about that. Just, let me keep my door money to pay these bands. Some places were like, oh, that's cool. And then once like one show would happen, they'd be like, yeah, you're never doing that here again. Like, fuck off.
Yeah. And is that mainly just off of the show was like that crazy and they're like, we don't want that liability, or like what was the roadblock, or if you could hypothesize what they were thinking when they're seeing breakdowns and stage dives for the very first time?
Sure. I remember this one VFW hall. We did a show at, I believe, I can't remember who was playing. This band called Bitter Thoughts from Chicago was playing, and the entire room was two-stepping. And when I mean the whole room, like it's a pretty big space. So the entire room is two-stepping to this one part. And I remember the owner of the hall, like looking in through the door while at that exact moment and seeing what was happening, and just the look of just utter confusion on his face. So nothing like ever bad per se, like really happened at like our shows. Like there's never any big fights or nothing really got broken. And if they did, like I paid for it. I think they just really didn't know what to expect when there's like 200 kids here, like going buck wild.
This is not some slow really dancing. What is this like dancing in place thing? I don't understand it. But
yeah, and I always tried to be, upfront as I could. I'm like, yeah, there will be moshing. There's going to be kind of like weird dancing. Like, are you okay with that? And they were always like, oh yeah, that's fine, blah, blah, blah. And then I think when they actually saw it and like what was actually happening, I think they're kind of like, whoa, I don't know if this is what we signed up for. But I ended up making those places some good money on their bars. So I guess they can't complain that much, but
yeah, they're like listening to this podcast and they're like, maybe we should do another one of those. Cause times are tough with no live events, but, yeah,
but yeah, after like, we just kind of not necessarily exhausted all of our options per se, but, my friend JJ, who I mentioned before, he, started booking shows at his house. He has a house in Franklin, which is the next city over here, just about 10-15 minutes away outside of Milwaukee. And honestly, I tell him this all the time, but if it wasn't for him, like he definitely saved Milwaukee hardcore. Cause like when we didn't have like a single place left to go, he just like opened his doors to us and was like, yeah, I'll do shows at my house. He has the nicest DIY house setup I've ever seen. He has like a mini fridge stocked full of like Arizonas and waters, Gatorade for all the bands. Just like
that's my shit. Damn. Yep. Okay, let's go. Just mid set, just open the mini fridge, close it again. Love that.
It's the cleanest basement you'll ever be in. Just everything is great. His neighbors are super cool about it. Like it's in the suburbs, so you'd think that like they'd be like super dickheads about it, but no, he just kind of like explained to them like what was going to happen. They're like, oh, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
So when they see like 1,000 cars parked on their blocks, I don't think the cops got called once, but it was for like someone like locked their keys in their car or something.
Oh,
and that was like, and they like didn't know what to do, so like they like tried to like I don't know what happened, but yeah, they came back and they're like, oh, what's going on? And he was just like, oh, just some music in my basement. They're like, all right, have a good night. So
you're like, say no more.
I was like, yeah, I think that was like the only incident, but yeah, so he's been doing shows there, I want to say since like 2016. So this year will be 5 years of shows at his house. And I think it was last October, he had the 100th show at his house. If you can imagine that. 100th.
Wow. Damn.
Yeah.
It's like, probably thrown more hardcore shows at his house than he's had like people over for dinner, probably, like that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. He does. And he books shows here in Milwaukee too. He works with me. But he also does like all like the emo shows. That's like definitely more his forte. So he does like all of those. and then books a bunch of emo stuff at his house, a bunch of hardcore stuff. But yeah, if it wasn't for him, I don't know what we would have done. But a couple of years ago, my one friend Andy approached me about opening a venue. And it was a pre-existing venue here in the next city over. At the time, it was called the Metal Grill.
The Metal Grill. Okay.
Yep. They did do all ages stuff, but it was like kind of weird. They did like all ages, but like also 21 and up. And like the owners of that place, they were really cool. I booked a couple shows there when it was Metal Grill, but they got it, but like they didn't. I guess you could say they're like,
sure.
You're paying us, you're bringing us business, but we don't know about all this like stage diving and all this crazy stuff. But that they ended up selling it, and my friend Andy actually bought it. Him and a few people went in and bought it. Actually reopened it as an arcade, bar, and all ages music venue. Cool. And awesome. He's played in many bands throughout the years. He totally gets it, and he told me exactly what he's planning. He's like, "Yo, I'm opening this venue. I'd love to have you book all your shows here." I'm like, "Yep, absolutely. I'll do all my shows there."
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's venue opened a couple years ago, called the X-Ray Arcade, and that's pretty much where I've been doing all my shows ever since. It's all ages, just the perfect spot, really good stage height. It's like a 200 cap room. And my main thing with that is it's just Andy and the rest of the owners, they like get it. They all play in a punk and hardcore metalcore band. So, they know what to expect when I book a show there. So they're super welcoming, super accommodating, and anything I need, they're there for. So definitely, so appreciative of them and them just opening their doors to us. So now we finally have another place to call home.
Yeah. No, I love some of those things. And yeah, it's crazy. Just like when you're put in that position, like I'm sure he's like, well, I have a basement, like, and we can give it a go and just see. And the fact that he did 100 shows there and like, doesn't seem to be slowing down, but like, yeah, that's a lot, especially considering there might be multiple people living there and the neighbors and, the living in the burbs and all that kind of stuff. But I think hardcore has that just really resilient nature to it, where it's like, okay, like show got canceled the same day, where can we do it? And it's like immediately go. And I think that mindset isn't as like, it's definitely not as like focused into other things like, the show gets canceled and then that's it. And then it's like, oh, boo-hoo. But like hardcore is like, no, like we're going to make this happen. Like, I think it was just before the pandemic started, there was like some kind of last minute show that like, I think it was like Knocked Loose and Vane and like a ton of bands. Like they all started at like 1 a.m. or something crazy like that. But again, it was all like, no, we're going to make this happen. Like the community is here. Let's all rally together to figure it out. And, there's countless stories. Like if I sought out just to get all the stories of people that have like really had to bust their butt the day of to make a show happen, like it would be, it's almost infinite. Like there's so many scenarios.
Yeah. You could start a whole nother podcast on that.
Yeah. It would need to be called like Under the Gun or like plans or the show must go on or something like that. But yeah, it's
right.
It's just cool because I think that builds up a level of it just builds into your character of like just looking for solutions versus being down on the realities, if that makes sense.
Yep, 100%.
Mm-hmm. So you guys have that as like one of your like go-to spots, and like you were saying, it's like it's very nice just to be able to like, this is where we're doing shows. We don't really have to like shop around and risk it at like a certain place. Some of that is fun because I, as someone who archives shows, like I always love being able to like see the Expire set that happened in like Burgerville, Portland, Oregon, because it's like
a classic video
or like any of the
classic video. Yep.
any of the videos, I think that set starts out with like, all right, this is a little weird, but let's get a little weirder, and it just like explodes, and the drive-through is it's so crazy. Like I think
Yeah.
if I had to say, that's probably one of my personal like top 10 like hardcore live sets of all time because it's so wild. But yeah, being able to see like even on a more like timely level, like RIP Spinelli's in Louisville, but like even that was like a spot that was like pretty uncommon. Like you're playing in just like a pizza joint, but it takes
Yeah.
whoever owns that business or who owns that house or whatever to get it. And like that
Yep.
probably comes from that world. And so I don't know, as you know, as both of us are like the old heads of or getting into that range, it gets my mind turning of like what are things that I can do to like create like if there isn't a space, how can I create a space or like a hardcore treehouse, so to speak, for people to come and
Hmm.
be goofy for like 3 to 4 hours of a on a weekend or whatever,
Right.
and being able to tie that with how it sounds with like the arcade and some of those other things is like just that kind of nice crossover between between cultures. So that's very sick.
Yeah, it rocks. They're like I said, they're super accommodating, and they do other stuff too. They do shows there of all kinds, different events. They have like pop-up vegan brunches, beer tasting, things of that nature. So they do it all. It's
Cool.
quite astounding.
Okay, so here's a question: if you were doing, Tommy's, DIY all ages venue, and you were, the sole owner, and you could like control everything, you were given a building budget and all that. What would be like the
Mhm.
top three things that would be must-haves for you? So that could be anything from like how the stage is, or how the layout is, like how people enter into the room. Like, where does your mind go with how you would build your perfect venue, so to speak?
Sure. Stage would definitely be a huge one. I'd say no more than 2 or 3 feet. Anything past that is absurd. Um,
You don't need to like
it,
push yourself up. You just need to have a small step up for sure.
yep. Stage height, very important. Has to be the right height for diving, but also shouldn't be anywhere like up to here or anything. That's just absolute nonsense in my
Hmm.
opinion. That's not needed.
Right.
Um, I would also, I would definitely like to have a bar in there. Not, not more so for like the alcohol aspect, just for even selling soda, water, Red Bull, whatever the case may be.
Hmm.
Um, and probably the third would I'd like. This has always been a dream of mine to open this type of place, but also have like practice spaces, because
Okay.
here in Milwaukee, practice spaces are damn near impossible to come by.
Right.
There's one spot by my house that has like a bunch of rooms, and I'm lucky enough to have one of those rooms by myself. But besides that, like all the other spaces pretty much like either shut down or got bought out. So
Mm.
like definitely having like a venue with practice spaces in it has always been something that's been a dream of mine. I'd love to run something like that someday.
Yeah. Yeah, you potentially run into a couple logistical issues as far as like, oh, you can't jam tonight because like, or yeah, you can't practice tonight because we have a show. But at the same time, your band is playing that same venue that you're in the same building. You just wheel the cab down the stairs and you're ready to go. So
Yep,
versus
exactly.
loading it into the car and doing that and finding parking. So yeah, that's a must have. I would say that's a good pick.
Yep, those would probably be my three, and then obviously that's the sounds good. Um,
Obviously, yeah.
yeah,
What would
obviously.
what would be, because I know like most venues are like, oh, we have Coke products or we have this and this. So like, what would be on top of the three things? What would be like the three bevs that you would have on deck at all times? This is a
Ooh,
selfish bev connoisseur question to see how you answer
no,
it.
that's okay. For all my straight edge friends, we're definitely gonna have Red Bull,
Yes.
because I have a lot of those. They love drinking Red Bull.
Hmm.
Uh, for all of my alcohol consuming friends, I'm definitely gonna say White Claw, because ever since those came out, I've just been on a kick for
Mm-hmm.
like the past 3 years.
Definitely. Nice.
Probably the third, I would say probably some kind of weird, like off the wall soda, like
Okay.
maybe like a Jolly Good, or just like something that's kind of weird and obscure. Just like, I don't know, be like, oh, that's the place that has that brand. You can't get it anywhere else.
Right. And, you know, maybe someone doesn't fuck with the energy drinks as much, but they don't drink alcohol at all. So it's like that's the secret option number 3. So yeah. And
Yep.
you know, getting something that's a little bit niche here is probably the right call.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know when it's like anything scope related, like you like or anything that I do, I just always am finding I'm just like bringing beverages to whatever I'm going to now. Like I'm
Yep.
recording, oh, I'm bringing liquid deaths for everyone. Oh, I'm like running into a friend, I'm going to bring them like a beer or whatever it is. Like I'm just always like just I want to be the bev influencer and just like pass off things that I like and to my other friends. But I know that if Scoped ever owned a venue or some kind of space of its own, it's like I want it to be, almost look like Eminem meets like just have the fridges of just all beverages. Like,
Yes.
is this a venue or like what's going on here? It's like no, it is, but you just have to get a bev before you enter. It would be like a hallway, like you have to get a beverage before you even enter the space.
But before you enter the space,
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be a callback to this episode of like you need to check a bev before you get into the podcast, and you gotta check a bev before you get into the show.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
I know if we did that, that would like some person would like have some weird like, well, I'm not thirsty. It's like drink something.
Yeah, drink water. You can't come in. I don't know what to tell you. That's the rules.
I'm sure you're not hydrated enough. You drink this right away. So Tom, like obviously, if we've been talking a lot about booking shows, you know, been playing in bands, maybe you can kind of shift into because I think a lot of people either they jumped into doing a show right away, or some people started to do a couple of things to at least ease into it. And I know that one thing that I guess you were the front runner for was the Milwaukee pop-up event. So maybe talk to me about like how the planning of that went into it and how, you know, that was a way for you to kind of get everyone's temperature. Because, mutual friend of ours, Jessa and I have been like, as far as the time of recording this, we're going to be having our first ever like scoped pop-up event to kind of see that. So I think what you did kind of inspired the idea of doing something like that, but I kind of want to hear from you, like how that went and how that was received, I guess.
Sure, absolutely. So to be completely honest with you, the Milwaukee pop-up was mostly spearheaded by my friend Angie from Chicago.
Okay.
She runs Resonating Zine.
Right.
I'm sure you probably heard of it.
Have seen
and
that.
She had done one a few months ago down in Chicago, and she had been in contact with me about doing one up here, and I was like, yeah, that sounds super cool. Definitely down to help. So she, as far as like all the planning and like the vendors were concerned, that was actually all her. So shout out to her, shout out to Resonating. Love what she does. It's all super cool. But I helped, contact the venue, just kind of like explain everything. And we had such an incredible turnout. I was not expecting it, to be completely honest. I would say throughout the course of the day, because I believe it was like 5 or 6 hours. So not all at once, but, throughout the cycle of the day, people coming and going. We probably had close to 80, 90 people who showed up for it.
That's awesome.
It was outside. Everything was like spaced apart, at that time, trying to be as safe as possible. But we made like an event on Facebook for it, to kind of promote it a little more. The event page like popped off like immediately. I was like, oh wow, this is gonna be pretty cool. And I think even more people showed up to the actual event than who actually RSVP'd online for it.
The opposite of what normally happens.
Yeah. So honestly, so we had a bunch of we had a bunch of bands here from Milwaukee and Chicago and Indiana sell merch. For our scene, like at least this part of the Midwest, like Milwaukee, Chicago, and Indiana, we're all just kind of like one big scene, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So every time, like I always try to like include like bands from both Chicago and Indiana, and stuff we do here as well. So we had bands from all three areas selling merch, bunch of different vendors, everything from arts, to records to vintage clothes. Like it couldn't have gone better in my opinion. It was a beautiful day. Just so many people, just so many faces that I hadn't seen in like 15 months. So at points it was like even a bit overstimulating. I'm like, oh wow, I don't know how to be this social anymore. But
right.
She even contacted Tyler and Ash, who do LDB Records. They brought their distro here for it, and yeah, they sold just a ton of stuff, and it was just great. Could not have gone better in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool, especially in a time where like I feel like most times in hardcore you connect with all these people in like different ways, whether it's at a show or a festival, or like you start online and then you meet that person. But I always find myself always just like doing a time check of like, when is the last time that I actually saw this person in the flesh? And like with you, It's obviously like Snow and Flurry Fest. But like it's crazy for like, especially on a local level, when you would see the same mofos like back-to-back weekends at times, and then it's like an entire year in change of like not seeing them. So like that's coming up, and I'm sure I'm going to be like, wow, I haven't seen you since February of 2020. Like, what the fuck, But yeah, it's I think that is like super important. Everyone's got different like social tolerances as far as like being out in like hardcore is a very like social high level kind of thing. So if someone's like likes to keep themselves a little bit more introverted, that's a lot. So yeah, I'm sure it's like it was very stimulating at the time to be like, oh hi, okay, like just everybody that you've missed for so long.
Yeah, it was great. We're actually probably getting a little ahead of myself. We booked the first like Milwaukee Hardcore Comeback show here in September, and we're actually going to do another pop-up before the show at the same venue.
Nice.
We're like, yeah, let's just do like a pre-show one, maybe make it a little bit smaller. We haven't announced it yet, so here's a little teaser for the future.
Love that.
We're still confirming a couple things, but yeah, that should be announced like probably the first week of August. So hopefully that'll encourage people to come out a little bit early, socialize, then stick around for the show, obviously, and have a good crowd for the first couple bands.
Totally. Yeah, and I think the point of doing these pop-ups isn't to make a ton of money and like because people haven't been able to sell merch or whatever. It's like literally just like the point is just to have people gather, because we've been told not to gather for like a long time. But now that people are like starting to get their vaccines and like that has been rolled out like pretty like kind of like nationwide, I think that's kind of safe to say. And there's still some level of unknown with like some things, but I think it's like the opportunity is there to do things in a safe manner, like you were saying. So
yeah, absolutely. And we were kind of like, it might be a little bit too early to book a show. We kind of at the time, want to do the right thing, make sure everyone, who want to get their vaccinations had, ample opportunity. But, we definitely thought it was the right time to do the pop-up. And it was a great success. Definitely could not have gone better.
Yeah. I'm very excited. By the time this episode comes out, it'll have already happened, but I'm just excited to see the friends that, again, like I would see almost at least once a month, in the flesh again. So that's very exciting. I know, let's talk a little bit about the comp. So that's probably one of the latest endeavors that you had your hands in. I saw on your Instagram that it took somewhere in the area of 9 months to like pull that all together. So, any comp is, a feat of its own, because you're like really trying to get bands who are recording new material to get on their shit and all that. But yeah, tell me a little bit about what the why behind the comp was, where the funds from that were going to, and the response.
Yeah. So the comp all stemmed from a conversation between myself, Michael, and JJ, who I keep mentioning on this episode.
Yeah.
But it stemmed from a conversation we had, I want to say like September or October of last year, maybe.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So the three of us, we were just on a FaceTime, just three of us just shooting the shit. We hadn't talked for a while, so we were just talking, and then JJ actually approached us with the idea. He's like, we don't know at that time, we don't know when the next time we're going to be able to book a show is. We don't know if it's 3 months from now, 3 years from now, like what bands are even active now, like when
Right.
shows start to come back, who's going to be around. So we kind of, he approached us with the idea of putting together this compilation, not only just so we can record music and everyone can hear it, but also so like, okay, these bands are still active, this is what Milwaukee hardcore has been up to during the course of this uncertain time.
Sure.
So I want to say, and they're both going to murder me because I have the worst memory on earth. Like you'll tell me something and then I'll literally forget it like the next day. So they're for sure going to murder me when they hear this, but I think it was October of last year. It might've been November. I know they're screaming at their phones right now. You idiot. You're telling the story completely wrong.
Right.
So yeah, let's just say last year, Q4,
Sure.
we
came up with the idea, and then
yeah. So we started asking bands even back then. We had a list of bands, and everyone we asked was down. And then at the time, both the X-Ray Arcade, which I mentioned before, and this other all ages venue here in town called the Cactus Club, they both were closed. Not doing shows or anything. So it was just really a time of uncertainty where it's like, well, we don't know if these places, are still going to be around once, things start to reopen. So we're like, we should do a benefit for these two venues. They're both our local all ages venues. Little backstory on the Cactus Club. It's an all ages venue here in Milwaukee. It actually got bought out by this gal named Kelsey. She's played in like punk and hardcore bands here in Milwaukee, and she bought it back in, I want to say like late 2020,
Okay.
and opened it late 2019, opened it early 2020, and then like I want to say like a month or two after she opened it, the world shut down.
Oh no. Yeah.
So I don't like, and at the time when she bought it, it was, just a strictly 21 and up venue, but she actually like pretty much like lobbied the city and went to like town hall meetings and was basically like, we need this to be an all ages space. And she actually got the city to grant her the license for the all ages space. Cause it's like kind of a different process you have to go through, and they only have like a certain amount you can get. So it's just kind of like, it's a difficult process, right?
It's not just like, it's the kids and they're like, okay, like, you
just
through a lot more hoops.
Yeah,
there.
you have to go through hoops, all this red tape, go to meetings, go in front of like city councilmen, do the the whole 9 yards.
Wow.
So she was able to get it to be all ages, and then I contacted her. I'm like, hey, I'd love to do shows there this year. We had a bunch of cool stuff planned, and then the world shut down. But so we definitely wanted to help out the Cactus Club as well, because I'm like, even though we haven't done a show there yet, I know we definitely will in the future. So
For sure.
we just decided that the comp would actually be a benefit to, we're going to split the profits between those two venues. And now, since it did take so long, both venues did reopen and now are both doing shows. So the good news is they ended up making it through the pandemic. But we still had the idea at the time, so we're still obviously gonna have a benefit for them, just a way of giving back. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where that idea came from.
Mm.
But as far as reception, it was the reception honestly blew me away. Um, we got we got more than one write up in like some of our local newspapers here, which was blew my mind honestly. And
Yeah.
just we did a pre-order for cassettes. We sold a bunch of those. Those are actually on the way, so I'm really excited to see like the final product.
Definitely.
Yeah, we're also a little insight. We're gonna do some shirts for the benefit as well. We're gonna sell those at the pop-up before the free show here in September.
Nice.
And then yeah, so we're gonna everything.
I hope it just says Milwaukee style, big on the chest or something.
It literally does.
Hell yeah, let's go. That's all I wanted.
I'll for sure make sure you get one.
Hell yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so and then so everything is completely a benefit for both venues. We're not not taking any proceeds or anything. We've the three of us funded everything. So we don't mind doing that at all. I don't care if I don't have to make a cent off of anything. I just want to give back to two venues that are, extremely important to Milwaukee hardcore, not even Milwaukee hardcore, just the music scene in Milwaukee in general. So
yeah,
definitely want to do anything I can to give back.
Yeah. And I think you mentioning, oh, well, these venues opened up, like, that doesn't mean that they're like, they have like, they don't have the last, X amount of months not to like pay back. And, cause ideally you want to just like be making money the entire year versus just the back half of it or whatever. So no, I think that's really cool that you guys just, stuck to that versus like, oh, well, should we change things because they're open? It's like, I think any venue, no matter where you are in the world, needs some help right now, whether that's financial or volunteering or promotional, whatever it is. Cause like, yeah, live music and just events just like got the life sucked out of it by the time things went down. So it's like new spots opening up is sick, but like being able to support those like legacy spots as well that lots of shows were happening. I know like we were talking about just like shows and like people that like get it, but like if you look at, even at like a place that in my opinion is pretty legendary, which is like Program out in California, like that's like a shop on the surface, but like shows are a part of that. And so obviously not having that for the last year probably took a hit. So yeah, I think anything that you can do to help support, even if it's like giving $20 from your paycheck to be able to do that, like that, those little things go a long way. So I think that's very, very cool. And to hear that, like, even like the local paper and stuff is like giving you guys like a shout out is like, that's really, really cool as well.
Yeah, it was. I was honestly blown away. I think we had like 3 or 4 write-ups through the various like local media sources, and then it was all just like also a cool way to have bands put out new music. Not since it was for a benefit. Not every single song on there is new. I would say like a majority, probably like 80%, were new. But some bands, either just couldn't do it or whatever the case may be. But we still wanted to include them. Just to put out a song that, they already had. But I would say a vast majority of them are brand new tracks.
Yeah, I remember when we were DMing back and forth because I wanted to feature any new bands or new releases, and you gave me the list. And I was like, yeah, this was like, there's only like maybe 2 or 3 that I was that didn't have new stuff. And I think a comp, especially like a local comp, is like a great way to be like, here's something new, but it doesn't have to be this big planned release of like, oh, it's a split or it's an EP or it's a promo or whatever. It's like, nope, one new song, like, and you're able to kind of slide that in wherever live. Cause like you were saying, it's a great way to show, hey, this is what we've been up to for the last, period of time where, we haven't been able to write the demo and then put out shows. Like your Reality Check shirt is like a band that comes to mind where it's like, I've been wanting new music from them. And then to be able to get even just one song on the comp was like, all right, that scratched the itch. And then, as shows are coming back, they'll be able to do more proper releases. So yeah, I think that was a great move. Was there any bands or songs on that were like the debut for any bands? Like they didn't have any other music out prior, and that was like their first official release, if you want to call it that?
No, it's funny you mentioned that though. We were actually trying to do that. I actually had a couple bands in the works that were trying to do just that. Be like,
Right.
here's our debut. Like, don't even like make a Twitter or an Instagram or anything. Just be like, oh, what's this? I've never heard of this band. Who are these guys?
Right.
But unfortunately, it didn't pan out for those. But we actually had like 3 or 4 of those that we were trying to do just that. But
Gotcha.
hopefully in the future, if we have our shit together, we can
Yeah.
figure it out. But
Yeah. People,
yeah, it's funny.
Guys in hardcore being disorganized. What? Like,
Yeah, never heard of that one.
yeah. Sometimes it is like some of those things where it's like, oh yeah. But again, like just figuring out for it to still happen. But yeah, that's another earning of stripes when it comes to like playing in a band where things are very disorganized and it drives you up the wall. But no, I think overall the split was the comp was like really, really good. You know, I remember when we were doing our monthly playlist, I was like, I want to put as many tracks on this as possible just to have them all like sitting together. So you know, especially for someone who's looking through the list, is like, what's this like Milwaukee style album? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you including those. Definitely extremely beneficial. Just super stoked that, you know, it just got a lot more notice than I thought it was. And I was really happy I had a hand in putting that together.
Of course, man. Yeah. It's, you know, comps are such a tricky thing because you're like, people don't talk about the logistics when it comes to like connecting with bands half the time. Like I feel like putting a comp together is almost the same level of logistics if you were like putting a fest together. Like you're talking to that many bands potentially, but you're, instead of being like, hey, can you be here to play this date with these bands? It's like, hey, can you record a song and then send me this? And then like it's different conversations, but the same level of dialogue between different people. So that's crazy. So I applaud you for that.
Yeah, 100%. But before I actually did it, I did not realize the length of the logistics behind that. We maybe in the future, you know, toss around the idea of perhaps you know, doing more in the future. But definitely need to have some, not better planning, but maybe like a tighter deadline next time, so it doesn't take almost that.
Get your shit in by this date, please. Yeah.
Yes.
That's so funny. Tom, a couple more questions before we wrap up. I know, you know, the main band that you're doing vocals in is ENERVATE, and you guys just put out a little, I guess it was an EP, 3 songs. Does that fall into the EP category?
Yeah.
Whether that's a demo or something, but yeah, you guys put that out, and I gave it a spin today, and I noticed that you have a double guest spot on No Time Left, and I was like, is hardcore moving into that direction where it's like not just one guest spot doesn't do it enough, you got to have 2, and you had Jordan from Karma, and I don't know who from Florida, because it caught me off guard when it's like from Florida to Chicago. I was like, this band's from Milwaukee. I don't understand.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. To go back just a little bit.
Yes.
I actually played bass for ENERVATE.
Oh, sorry. I'm getting a couple things mixed up.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
No, that's okay.
Do you do vocals for any bands right now?
I sang for Terrified Eyes. We're kind of broken up. I don't know.
It's in question. Yeah.
Yeah. We just like haven't gotten together. I don't think we played since Snow and Flurry. So it was never like actually we did one show after that here, but nothing was ever like, oh, this is like a last show or anything. We're all just in, you know, many different bands. My friend Cody, who played drums for Terrified Eyes, he's in like, I don't know how many bands now, at least like 5 or 6. He's a very
sick drummer. I will say that. I really enjoyed doing his drum cam from that fest.
Yeah, one of the best drummers I know. He has this really cool shoegaze band called Shame Wave. He plays guitar, actually plays everything in that band. But plays guitar, sings the whole 9 yards. They had a song on the comp, which was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I used to sing for Terrified Eyes, and now I currently play bass for SLOWPANIC and ENERVATE.
Okay, so
Yep.
I think I got confused because you guys' demo, everyone's like the silhouettes, so it wasn't maybe clear on like who else could be in the cards for vocals. So I apologize on that front, but
no, that's okay. That's not the first time I've gotten that. I've gotten, oh, you sound different in that band. I'm like, yeah, it's a different gentleman. It's not me.
It's not me. Yeah. But yeah, I thought that was cool that you guys had the double guest feature. So, being as someone who's done vocals before, I'm sure you could speak, even though you're not the vocalist, I'm sure you can speak to it a little bit.
Yeah. So that song was written by, like you said, Jordan from Karma, and then Jeff, who used to sing for Bloodbather from Florida. And
wow, okay, that's sick.
Yep. Yeah.
Love his vocals.
Yeah, it fucking rocks. So our the singer, not my vocalist per se, but the singer Lon, he's originally from South Florida. Moved up here a few years ago to go to law school, and he's been living in Milwaukee ever since. And I don't think he was in Bloodbather, but I think he like filled in for a couple tours. Just been like friends with those guys for forever,
sure.
To my understanding. And then we're like toying around with people like who we wanted to like do a part, and he's like, yeah, like I really want Jeff to do it as well as Jordan. And the three of them actually got together, not in person, obviously virtually, but wrote the lyrics for that song. Each part in that song, the different vocal parts like that person wrote. So it was kind of like a combined effort of all three of them, and came out really fucking cool in my opinion. It's definitely gonna be my favorite song to play live. I can just see it in my head already without getting too ahead of myself.
Yeah. And obviously the dream would be to have both of those respected homies like do their specific parts. But I guess if there's only one person, like, does it need to be two people all at once? Like, let's say both of them are, on tour or not at the show. Like, you're like, okay, who wants to do this part? But you actually need someone else to do it. Like, that's a lot of guest vocal responsibility just to do that song, it seems.
Yeah, that's what we're toying around with the idea for that for the first show, because we're like, all right, both of them won't be able to be here. Karma's gonna be on tour during that time.
Yeah.
And then obviously Jeff lived in Florida. We're like, yeah, so how are we gonna play this song live? We haven't figured it out yet. So
yeah, to be determined. We'll be back.
To be determined. Once we figure it out, I guess you'll just have to be at the show to see it.
yes, 100%. Yeah, and I'm hoping that I'll get to see you rock the bass and do the ENERVATE stuff live in the near future, whether that's you guys coming up here or something in the States. But Tom, this has been really fun, man. The last question that I ask every guest on the podcast is a favorite Mosh story that they would like to share. So that could be literally anything that's first to your mind. Could have happened to you, could have, you did it to someone, could be funny, could be gruesome, whatever you think is a good way to end off the show. It's up to you.
Sure. So I actually thought about this question long and hard. I was like, I have so many cool ones, but I think I'm gonna go with a modern one. So
a modern Mosh story. All right, let's go.
Yeah. So we actually had the first hardcore show back happened here back in June. I believe it was the 20th. It was
it's like
band called
a month as far as the time of recording this. Sorry, a little fun fact.
Wow. Yeah, literally a month ago today was the first hardcore show back.
Yeah. Unless you're, just talking out of your ass and it's like a totally different day. But anyways.
Yeah. So it was Big Laugh from here, and it was World I Hates, and it was World I Hate's first show.
Yes. Very sick band.
Yep, they fucking rock. The original plan was it was going to be outside under this bridge here in Milwaukee. It was going to be like one of those like classic like generator shows, like kind of just get in, do the show before the cops come, get out. But unfortunately that day it ended up raining, like really fucking bad. So everything was muddy. And they're like, well, we can't do the show like due to the weather. So like, it's kind of, to call back to our conversation before, it was kind of like literally the day of, we need a spot, like, what are we going to do? And I didn't have a hand in putting the show on. Maybe for the best, because I would have just been probably a basket case freaking out where I'm going to do this show.
Sure. Yeah.
Just high anxiety. But it ended up getting moved to the Cactus Club, that newer spot that I mentioned previously.
Yeah.
And they contacted the owner, and she's like, "Yep, give me a couple hours to get a sound guy here, clear out some stuff, and we'll do it here." So free show, just 2 bands, but since it got moved, Low End actually got added to the show at the very last minute.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So
I was like, only 2 bands, but yeah, no, I knew that it was a small amount of bands, but it makes sense if you're doing a generator show not to have a ton of bands play, because you're like, we got to finish this bitch before we get in trouble.
Yep.
But yeah. Okay, so
Yep.
Low End gets added.
Yep.
And then what happens next?
Yeah. So we show up to the show. It's a free show, so we're blasting it all over Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, like shows move, show up to the Cactus Club. World I Hate is playing, and I'm not really a mosher, like I'm like old, so I don't want to like get hurt or anything, but I'm like, all right, this is my first show in like damn near a year and a half. Like I have to hit the pit. So I look out, and it's just like me and like all my friends just like going as hard as possible. Just super cool. And there's this kid from here, not kid, he's an adult. My friend.
Yeah, you have to differentiate, like, oh, you actually have like adult responsibilities, but totally.
Yeah. You're like a 25-year-old. Like, why am I calling you a kid? But so my friend Jimmy Dunbar from here, he is probably not to sound corny, but probably like the best mosher in Milwaukee, just like the best style in my opinion. Goes hard for every band. And I remember looking out during World I Hate, he's doing his thing, and he swings back and just demolishes a kid's nose. Like, it's the classic, like, glasses go flying, like nose starts bleeding. The kid, the guy hit was fine. He's, apologized and everything after.
Sure.
But he's like, no, it was just so cool, like, to be at a show, blah, blah, blah. But we always have like an inside joke. It's like, well, it's not really a show unless Jimmy clocks someone in the face on complete accident. It's never intentional.
Yes.
But it was just fitting that, well, it's the first show back. It's about 5 minutes into it, and he's already clocked someone in the face from moshing.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Boom. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Literally, that was it. I was just looking out. I saw across the pit. I saw it happen. I'm like, well, yeah, we're about like 4 minutes, 30 seconds into the set. So hardcore is back in Milwaukee.
Yes. Yeah, there are certain things. You can't just say hardcore is back on a global scale. There's got to be those traditions or those things that you would see at every local show to be like, yep, hardcore's back in this specific area. And for Milwaukee, it was Jimmy just breaking some kid's nose. Well, hopefully not breaking, but just slam dunking on his face. So
yep.
I love that.
So I was like, I could go with like an older story, but I'm like, I'm going to keep it modern.
Yes. I love that. I'm curious. Do you know if Jimmy was at Snow and Flurry when we were there?
Yes, he was.
Because Low End had like one of the craziest sets, like so many stage dives from that show. But
he was definitely there. If I recall correctly, he was shirtless, and
does he have gloves?
He shirtless with gloves.
I picture that guy like to a T. Like I remember him so visually.
Yep. Yeah. So you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So shout out to Jimmy with the mad fist of fury. Always connecting. Well, Tom, this has been really fun. Anything you want to end on? Shout out, plug, all your band stuff and the comp and all that good shit will be in the description and in the show notes. But if there's anything you want to send the people off with, the floor is yours, my friend.
Sure, definitely. First and foremost, absolutely so excited to be here. Thank you so much
Of course.
for giving me an opportunity. Check out the comp, milwaukeestyle.bandcamp.com. You can purchase it digitally. All proceeds will go to our 2 local venues. We got a free show coming up. It's going to be September 11th. It's Reality Check's and ENERVATE's first show.
Let's go.
Yep.
Oh,
Definitely
man.
excited. Definitely excited for that. I'll make sure that there's some footage and send it your way as soon as we get it.
Please, please.
But other than that, I just want to shout out Reality Check, World I Hate, Big Laugh, Infamy, Shame Wave, Low End, shout out Stepping Stone, shout out Canada, shout out Western Canada Hardcore, shout out the Milwaukee X Canada group chat. If you know, you know. And that is what I will sign off with. Again, thank you very much for having me. This was a blast.
Of course, man. I will add to what you're ending on. I think if you give a fuck about places that your band might want to play in the future, I think going out of your way to, again, send a couple bucks, could be 5, could be 10, could be $20. That goes a long way. And I think means a lot if you're like, yeah, I want to go to Milwaukee and play with Low End or World I Hate or ENERVATE or literally anything. If you just took a couple minutes out of your day, go listen to the comp, buy it, that goes a long way. And, I think I just wanted to echo that. But yeah, this was definitely fun. Shout out to the group chat that I am not a part of. Maybe that'll change at the end of this episode. But yeah, shout out to you, Tommy. You're keeping Milwaukee alive, and I love that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This is great.